Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a question that's, well, it's top of mind for so many. Is college still the golden ticket?
Hmm. Yeah, it really is a big one.
We've gathered a really interesting set of sources to dig into this. We've got economic analysis from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York's Liberty Street Economics,
Right, some hard data there.
some quite pointed articles from
Mhm.
CNBC and Forbes, and also some real-world experience from Quincy Larson. He's the founder of Free Code Camp.
And he's been in adult education for, what, 2 decades? So he's seen a lot.
Exactly.
And for you, the listener, maybe you're a high school student trying to figure things out, or a parent helping out, or maybe you're just, interested in how education and careers are changing.
Yeah.
Our goal today is really to get beyond just the headlines. We want to pull out the core insights from all these different angles.
Help you understand the economics, the alternatives.
Sort of a streamlined guide to make sense of it all, hopefully without feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Let's start with that Federal Reserve data. Their research, it looks at the economic returns of a college degree.
And what are they finding generally?
Generally, it indicates that, on average, for the median graduate, it still provides a pretty solid return. About 12.5% in 2024, they estimate.
Wow, 12.5%. That's held up well, hasn't it? Compared to, say, typical returns from the stock market or bonds.
It has. It's interesting, right? Despite all the talk about costs, that return seems robust.
Yeah, it suggests there's still a strong demand for, what you learn in college. But I guess that median part is important. That average probably hides a lot.
Oh, definitely. And we'll get into that. The Fed's analysis, it looks at both the direct costs, tuition, fees, book supplies. But importantly, they factor in grant aid. So it's the net cost.
Okay, the actual out-of-pocket expense after aid.
Exactly. And they also look at the opportunity cost, which is basically the money you could have been earning if you were working instead of studying for 4 years or however long.
Right, the foregone wages, that's a big piece of the investment.
And here's a surprising trend the Fed data shows. We always hear about the sticker price of tuition just going up and up, right?
Constantly.
But the average net price, after aid and adjusted for inflation, it's actually come down a little bit recently.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's counterintuitive.
It is.
Yeah.
But that decrease has kind of been offset because those opportunity costs, the foregone wages, have actually risen.
Okay. So maybe the job market for people without a degree has gotten a bit stronger, making the choice to not work more costly in a way.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. It's a key nuance. The sticker price is scary, but aid helps many. Still, that trade-off, giving up potential earnings, is maybe getting tougher.
Makes sense.
And speaking of earnings, the Fed also highlights the wage premium. How much more college grads earn than people with just a high school diploma.
And that's still significant.
Still near an all-time high, actually.
Yeah.
They found the median college grad with a bachelor's earned around $80,000 a year in recent years.
Okay, $80,000. And for just high school?
About $47,000.
Wow. Okay, so that's a substantial difference, almost double still.
Yeah, a really big gap in earning potential on average.
And did the Fed look at, different fields of study? Does it matter what you study?
It does. They definitely point out that certain fields tend to give the highest financial returns, specifically things involving technical training, quantitative skills.
So like engineering, math, computer science.
Exactly. That kind of stuff, which really lines up with what we see in the job market demand right now, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Makes perfect sense.
But it's not all positive. The Fed researchers are careful to point this out, too. They say college might not be a financially sound decision for at least a quarter, 1 in 4 graduates.
1 in 4. Wow. So a significant chunk end up in jobs that just don't pay very well relative to the cost.
Apparently so. That's a big group for whom that investment might not actually pay off financially.
That really highlights the diversity of outcomes, doesn't it? That median number looks good, but yeah, a lot of people aren't getting that positive return.
Could be their major, the cost of their specific school, maybe just not finding the right job after. Lots of reasons, I imagine.
Sure.
The Fed also looked at how long it takes to finish. Does it still pay off if you take 5 or even 6 years?
Yeah, that's common now.
And their analysis suggests, yeah, generally it still makes economic sense in the long run, even taking a bit longer.
Okay.
But, and this is a really critical point they make, the financial burden on families is a serious concern. Families are covering a bigger share of the costs now than they used to.
And those costs just keep rising.
They do. College costs have gone up, on average 5.6% per year since 1983. That's way faster than inflation generally.
Oof. Yeah, that adds up over time. And you connect that to the huge amount of student loan debt out there.
Yeah.
What is it now?
Over $1.6 trillion,
Yeah,
held by about 40 million Americans.
1.6 trillion. It's staggering. And you also see enrollment declining a bit in bachelor's and associate's programs recently.
Right.
So all that together, it really suggests people and families are, well, they're seriously reevaluating that traditional college value proposition, aren't they?
It certainly seems that way. And that increasing financial pressure,
Yeah.
it really highlights the importance of thinking about return on investment, the ROI.
Which brings us to Quincy Larson.
Exactly. From Free Code Camp. He really approaches this whole college question primarily as an economic decision. He's focused on that ROI and something called net present value.
Basically, trying to calculate if the future benefits outweigh the current costs.
Right. And he echoes the Fed's point about earning potential.
Hmm.
He also notes it's roughly double with a bachelor's compared to just a high school diploma.
But what's really interesting is his take on student debt. He's quite strong on that, isn't he?
Very strong. He sees it as a major risk, something that adds a ton of uncertainty to that whole ROI calculation.
So his advice is,
Avoid it if you possibly can. And if you do have it, make it your absolute priority to pay it off fast.
that's pretty direct advice. Debt complicates the picture significantly.
Definitely. He also kind of reinforces what the Fed found about different degrees. Like, he acknowledges liberal arts gives you valuable skills, critical thinking, communication.
Yeah, soft skills.
But he points out that right now, computer science degrees offer, better immediate financial returns and just more job openings.
More direct path to a well-paying job, basically.
Seems so. And he even suggests that within STEM fields, having programming and math skills is getting more and more essential, regardless of your specific focus.
That makes sense. Tech is permeating everything. What about older people thinking about going back to school?
Yeah, he touches on that. For older individuals, that ROI calculation is even more critical. You have fewer working years left to recoup the investment.
Right, and balancing school with work and family.
Exactly. It's a different calculation. He also briefly mentions international students facing much higher costs and, visa complexities. Yeah, that's a whole other layer of challenges. Larson also gives some practical advice on where to start college. He actually recommends community colleges.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Lower costs, mainly. And he suggests they often have a stronger focus on actual teaching rather than faculty research, which can sometimes be the priority at bigger universities.
That's a good point. Better instruction, lower price. He also mentions private nonprofits, like the big names.
Yeah, he suggests looking into those too, including the prestigious ones, because they often have significant financial aid. But he warns against the private for-profit institutions. Seems he has concerns there.
Right. Those have faced a lot of scrutiny over costs and outcomes.
He also highlights ways to cut costs before you even get there or while you're there, like using AP credits from high school.
Ah, yeah, testing out of intro courses.
The CLAP program, college-level examination program, same idea, test out of courses.
Saves time and money. Smart. Did he mention any specific universities that are maybe lower cost?
He did. He mentioned a couple of ultra-low-cost accredited online universities like University of People and Western Governors University as legitimate options people could explore.
Okay, so pointing towards some potentially more affordable routes.
Right. And he also kind of debunks some common myths or warns against pitfalls.
Like what?
Well, like just following your passion without thinking about the ROI at all, or getting too bogged down in tiny differences between universities based on rankings data that might be misleading.
Yeah, avoiding analysis paralysis.
And also underestimating how important financial security actually is in the long run. He also pushes back against that popular idea that most successful entrepreneurs are college dropouts.
Ah, the Zuckerberg or Gates narrative.
Exactly. He says that's mostly a myth. The data shows most successful business leaders do have degrees.
That's a really important corrective, actually. Those high-profile stories are outliers, not the norm. We need to look at the broader trends.
Definitely. Okay, so shifting gears a bit now. Forbes had an article looking at alternatives, paths other than a traditional four-year degree.
Right, because that's becoming a much bigger part of the conversation. What did they highlight?
Well, one big one was entrepreneurship, starting your own thing.
Sure. High risk, high reward, potentially.
Exactly. Potential for big financial and personal rewards, creating your own opportunities, learning by doing.
But as Forbes probably points out, it's definitely not for everyone, right? Takes a certain resilience, drive.
Oh, yeah. A willingness to take on big risks. But for the right person, it's a direct route, possibly without needing that four-year degree first.
Okay, what else?
Technical and vocational training. This seems really key right now.
Getting specific skills for in-demand industries.
Precisely. Programs that are often faster and cheaper than a bachelor's degree. Things like apprenticeships, or even shorter options like coding boot camps.
Yeah, the strength there is practicality, right? Job-ready skills, often in fields where there are worker shortages like healthcare, manufacturing, tech.
Exactly. Get you into the workforce quicker.
What about learning on your own?
Forbes mentions that too. Self-directed learning. With all the online platforms now, Coursera, edX, workshops, conferences.
Right, it's much easier now to pick up skills flexibly and often pretty cheaply.
Totally. You control your own learning path. It takes discipline, of course.
Sure, you have to motivate yourself and figure out what's relevant.
But the cost savings and the flexibility are huge advantages for a lot of people.
Definitely.
Forbes also points to military service.
Ah, yeah. Training, income, and then the GI Bill benefits afterwards.
Right. You get career training, you get paid while you're training, and then you have significant help paying for education after your service.
That's a structured path with some real benefits, especially that GI Bill for future education or training. It makes things much more affordable down the line.
And finally, Forbes highlighted certification and designation programs,
Yeah.
industry-recognized credentials.
Okay, like what kind of things?
Things like the Series 7 for financial advisors, or maybe Google career certificates in tech fields, CompTIA A+ for IT support, stuff like that.
Right, so credentials that show employers you have specific validated skills for a particular job, often without needing the full degree.
Exactly. It can be a more focused, faster way to demonstrate competence for certain careers.
That makes a lot of sense. More targeted.
Forbes also touched on something interesting. The idea that maybe the value of a general degree is going down in some industries.
How so?
They suggest employers are increasingly looking for practical experience, specific skills, adaptability, maybe more than just broad academic credentials.
So a general degree like, say, business administration or marketing without a clear specialty.
Might face more challenges justifying the cost and time compared to someone with, say, specific accounting skills or coding abilities.
Right. Employers want to see what you can do, not just what you studied broadly. Tangible skills seem to be gaining value.
That seems to be the argument, yeah. A specific in-demand skill set can be a bigger advantage.
Okay. Now, it's probably important to acknowledge some counterpoints or nuances here, right? It's not all clear-cut.
Absolutely. Looking back at the Fed's analysis, for instance, the comments on their Liberty Street Economics blog, some readers raised really valid points.
So like what?
Like the fact that the Fed's main analysis focuses on people who actually graduate.
Ah, so it doesn't include those who start college but don't finish.
Exactly. And that's a pretty significant percentage of students, unfortunately. The argument is that focusing only on graduates might make the return on investment look better than it is overall.
Yeah, that's a critical point because if you factor in the costs and lost earnings for those who don't get the degree and the wage boost.
The average return for everyone who enrolls would definitely be lower than the return just for graduates. It potentially overstates the case.
That makes sense. Were there other methodological questions raised?
Yeah, some commenters questioned how costs were calculated, like using the average net price, and also this complex thing called the compositional effect.
Compositional effect. What's that?
It's basically about how having more people go to college affects the wages of both college grads and non-grads. It's complicated, but it influences the wage premium calculation.
Okay, so these economic models, they're useful, but they are simplifications, right? Averages hide individual variations, and the whole economic context matters.
Exactly. Good tools, but they don't capture the full, messy reality for every single person.
So let's try to bring this all together. What are the key takeaways for you, the learner, trying to navigate all this?
Okay, first takeaway. The data suggests, yes, on average, college can still be a good economic bet.
But it's definitely not a universal guarantee. It's not automatic.
Right. Your choice of major matters a lot. The actual cost you pay matters. And maybe most importantly, actually finishing your degree is critical for that ROI.
Absolutely. And it seems clear that technical analytical skills are really highly valued right now. So if you are going the college route, thinking strategically about your field and its job prospects is, well, pretty crucial.
Definitely. Takeaway number 2, don't ignore the costs. They're real, they're rising, and student debt is a major burden.
You absolutely have to be proactive. Research financial aid, grants, scholarships. Explore every single option to minimize debt. It's essential.
Yeah. And takeaway 3, really consider the alternatives. They're becoming increasingly viable and valuable.
Things like vocational training, self-learning, maybe entrepreneurship, military service, those certifications we talked about.
These can be faster routes to good jobs and valuable skills. They shouldn't be seen as just like backup options.
Exactly. For many people, they might actually be a better fit, more direct, more cost-effective, maybe even more rewarding.
Also, think critically about that idea of a general degree versus specific in-demand skills.
Yeah, what do employers really value in your target field? Is it the broad credential or is it demonstrable skills? Increasingly, it seems to be the latter in many areas.
And the final takeaway, maybe the most important, this is a deeply personal decision.
Totally. There's the economic side, yes, but also your own interests, your goals, your life circumstances, your tolerance for risk.
All of that plays a huge role in figuring out the best path for you. There's no single right answer.
Well said.
Okay, so to wrap up, here's a final thought to leave you with, something to chew on.
Right.
Given everything we've talked about, the changing job market, the rising costs of traditional college, the growth of these alternative learning paths, how might our very definition of a valuable post-high school education need to change in the years ahead?
Are we moving away from the four-year degree as the default gold standard?
Maybe. Are we on the cusp of a really fundamental shift in how people get the skills and knowledge they need for, fulfilling and financially stable careers?
It's a big question. Definitely something worth thinking about how things might evolve.
It is. Well, thanks for taking the deep dive with us today.